Hey guys, so welcome to my, I don't know if this is going to be a vlog. I think this is going to be more like a video where I just share my thoughts on things that I think you guys can benefit from. If you're new to my channel, I'm Crystal Tantric Yogi. I'm a certified Tantra yoga instructor and intimacy coach, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm kind of revamping my business and starting over. I used to have an old YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers, but I'm starting over because 2024 and 2025 has been like crazy, and I just needed to, I don't know, just do everything over again. Like, my life is just, if you saw my last video, you'll understand. But I think a lot of us are kind of feeling this lately. This video, I want to do something a little different. It's going to be a little bit like a vlog and then also kind of informative. My last video was around, that I posted, was around the time of like early July. It's August 9th now, so it's like almost a whole month later. A lot has happened. I have been working on a sacred foreplay series that I've been posting on my website, crystaltantricyogi.com. And if you saw my last vlog, you know I've been working with someone, a guy, his name is Melvin. And that's been going pretty well so far. If you want to check that out, go to my website. It's like a channel where I teach like a sacred foreplay series, and I share tantric practices, and I share like kind of sensual BDSM and kink, nothing too crazy, but very sensual, very, very spicy, because I really feel like people need to understand ways to be intimate, not just from a place of like mechanics, but also energetically and cultivating intimacy. I think we're missing a lot of that in our connections. So I've been working on that. I've been having spurts of fun here and there. Things are getting better gradually as far as like, you know, just socializing, but I'm still spending a lot of time to myself. But one thing that I did on my Instagram page around my birthday was I did like 4 things all week that I've learned about sex in my 44 years of living, and I was like, it'd be nice to like make something like that for my YouTube channel, but I'm just gonna do it all in one video. I'm going to take you guys, you know, with me this weekend to a couple of places, nothing too crazy. Spend the weekend with me, you know, type of thing, type of vlog. But I'm going to talk about 10 things in 4 different places, 10 or 11 things in 4 different places that I've learned about sex in my 44 years of living. So right now I'm in my living room in my very small apartment. I got dressed, I have a little black dress on. I'm not really going anywhere special. I'm just going to one of my favorite little breakfast spots in Dumbo to get me a little breakfast sandwich, even though it's like 1:30. I haven't eaten, but it's one of my favorite things I like to do on the weekend when my baby is not here. It's my weekend without the kid, and I'd much rather be like grinding on somebody. You single moms know what I'm talking about. But since I don't have a lover right now, at least not this weekend, I just will spend some time with myself. I'll probably like get some work done, you know, take myself out to eat, which I'm about to do, and then I plan on going to the beach tomorrow. So nothing too crazy. I'm going to take you guys along with me, but in the meantime, I want to share with you guys 44 things that I've learned about love and sex in my 44 years of living. So the first 4 things are this, or the first 11 things. Hey guys, I'm Crystal Tantric Yogi, a certified Tantra yoga instructor and intimacy coach. I have been exploring and sharing sacred sexuality practices for over 10 years now, and I'm so excited to be continuing my journey here in New York City. In this series, I invite you to come along with me on my adventures so you too can learn different ways to bring more excitement and pleasure into your intimate life. Welcome to my channel. Now let's go have some fun. So I kind of just wanted to sit down and get comfortable on the couch. That's one thing. To me, making love outside of the bedroom a lot of times is a lot more fun than just being in the bedroom. Like, I have found that in my 44 years of living, when it comes to love and sex, now I didn't start having sex till I was 18. Let me be very clear about that, 18 or 19. When I did, and over the years, I have found that having sex outside of the bedroom usually has always been the most fun. Not that having sex in the bedroom is not great, but having sex outside of the bedroom, at the couch, the floor, the kitchen, like, always seem to be more exciting because I think it fuels creativity. So don't be afraid to like get out of the bedroom sometimes and just be on the couch or be on the floor in the living room. I know that some people think it's crazy work to like be sleeping on the couch and then having company over, but you can always cover it with blankets or do whatever you need to do, clean the couch, whatever. Nobody has to know either. Okay, so the big thing though, like the real list, that's number one, but let's go to number two. Sex gets better with age. I think there's this huge misconception that when you're in your 20s, like, that's like the golden era of your life, and the 20s is an amazing time in your life, but you just don't know much. Like, and being 20, when you're in your 20s, you have all the equipment. A lot of times you have the hormones, you've got like all this energy, and you look gorgeous, but you really don't know what to do with your body because you really haven't learned enough. And even if you were fortunate enough for somebody to give you really great sex ed, you usually still haven't had a lot of practice and you haven't had a lot of experiences. So if you take care of your body and you keep learning and having experiences, usually your sex should get better with age. At least that's what I have found in my experiences, and mainly because, not just because of education, but also just because I've released inhibitions. I care less and less about societal norms or gender roles, things like that, as I get older, so the sex just gets a lot better. The next thing is being a good girl has little reward, which I think goes with releasing inhibitions. I grew up as a Christian. I don't consider myself a Christian now, but I am a believer. I'm a believer in Christ and his teachings, Christ consciousness. But as far as religion, like, I feel like a lot of it was created to control people and to and just to keep people in line. But I feel like when you have a good conscious awareness, self-awareness, you don't need super strict rules to let you know what's right from wrong. If you are a decent human being. Guidelines and having people that are spiritual leaders, having scripture, I think, is really important, but it doesn't have to come from one place. But growing up a Christian, like, I always had these strict ideas about like my sexuality and what I should and shouldn't be doing, and I feel like it really suppressed my desires and suppressed my expression, and so therefore it suppressed my pleasure. And so I have found that when you are very rigid with trying to be a good person, whatever you think that is, it usually is going to put a damper on your sex life. And it doesn't mean you have to like release every inhibition overnight and like not be grounded and not have morals and stuff, because that's not necessarily going to make your sex life good either. Because if you put yourself in danger, or you go through a bunch of trauma, that's not going to help. But this idea of being good as a reflection of like repressing certain things, and is just makes your sex life super boring, and you're just not going to be happy most of the time. So the next one is, in order to be a good lover, you have to study sex. So a lot of people will aesthetically try to look sexy with what they're wearing. There's all this cosmetic surgery that's becoming extremely popular and normalized. But what I have found is that if you really want to be good at sex, you just have to study it, just like you do anything else. And most people don't. Most people know very little about sex, no matter what their age is. And because sex is oftentimes such a taboo topic, and people want to present themselves in a way that's just respectable, they don't know what they're doing in the bedroom, no matter how old they are. They don't really know what they're doing. And so if you want to be a good lover, know that you can't just look good. And it's not about a certain age. It's not about certain things that you wear. It's not even necessarily about like taking a dance class and stuff like that, because I found too that sometimes people will present like they, you know, are open and stuff, but they still don't really know a lot about their bodies. They don't know a lot about their partner's bodies. You have to actually study sex in order to be good at it, and that can be fun. You know, study. You want to be a good lover, study what you're working with. Study your equipment, study your partner's equipment, study your own body. Take time to like self-pleasure and learn your own body, and just study. Learn as much as you can. The more you learn, the better lover you'll be, through experience and through just like research and you know, other resources, and not just like Googling stuff on the internet and watching porn. If someone thinks that sex is overrated, then they probably don't have a very good sex life. Like sometimes you might hear people say, oh, like sex is not that important, or I don't know why people are so hooked to sex or care so much about it, because, you know, like it's just sex. Usually those people don't have a great sex life. I'm telling you now that sex can change your life. It can change your perspective. And I'm not just saying from having, you know, from having children. Obviously that can change your life, or being caught up in like certain relationships because the DSEK is so good or something like that, or you have a good eater and they like blow your mind. But sexual energy is just a really powerful energy. It's a very magnetic, and when you have these endorphins and all these hormones running through your system and like blood rushing throughout your body, it really can create this kind of euphoric experience that's like extremely expansive, extremely transformative, and spiritually it was meant to be that way. Orgasms can give you a spiritual reset. So when you are doing it in a way that's extremely pleasurable, and you're doing it in a way with like a lot of intention and awareness, and you have a lover that's doing it too, it can be mind-blowingly good. And if you, so I'm saying this because if you ever hear this from your mother, aunties, cousins, friends, online, if you have a whole group of people in agreement with sex is not all that, they just aren't having bad sex, and you want to steer away from those people. Because I feel like anybody who's never had an orgasm at an older age, or has never had good sex, like I really do feel sorry for those people, because it's something in life you really don't want to miss out. If you've never had sex with somebody that's in love with you, or you've been in love with, like you're really missing out. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience, and it really literally can shift your whole perspective and send you on a spiritual journey, really, of exploration and releasing shame and guilt that leads to you doing other things. So know that if somebody thinks sex is not all that, or if your sex life is not all that, then there's some learning, and there's some that you need to do, and there's some shifting of things that you need to do. The next one is healthy people have better sex. So this is really important, because I feel like some of the reasons why people are not that interested in sex, because they have a lot of reproductive problems, you know. And so if you're suffering in that way, know that you need to work on your diet. You need to exercise. You need to take your body, taking care of your body seriously. Again, it's not about cosmetic surgery and all these aesthetic things. It's about taking care of your body from the inside out. And when you do that, your hormones are more balanced. Your body releases more stress. I'm a yoga instructor, and so I guarantee you, the more flexible you are, it's not just sexy to your partner, whoever you're with. You feel sensations completely different when your body is open, when you can open your body, and when you're fluid in your body, and like it's a completely different experience. And that your lover is going to love too, not just the aesthetic of like you being able to open your legs or whatever, but the energy transfer that happens through you and in exchange with the other person. If you want to be a really good lover, you need to be able to like have a really healthy body and experience the energy all throughout your body, and exude that. You know, I know you probably met people that they just like ooze sex And a lot of that too is because their body is healthy, they have a healthy energetic aura. It's hard to have a healthy energetic aura and be sexy and confident if your body is not healthy. And then if your hormones are off, or you have a weak pelvic floor, or with men, if your testosterone is really low because you haven't been, you know, weight training or resistance training, or if you're drinking a lot of alcohol and smoking too much, like all of those things affect like your experience with sex. So a healthy body most of the time is going to equate to a better sex life. Now, if you have a physically healthy person but they're not a good lover, or they don't have good sex, it's probably mental emotional blocks there, which has to do with mental and emotional health. So still good health, increased health means better sex. Let's see, energy becomes more important when you get older. Yes. Okay, so especially when it comes to men, I've learned this, but just in general, what I have found as I've gotten older, as a 44-year-old woman, I feel like my horniness is about the same that it was when I was a teenager. I don't feel like it's shifted a lot. I do feel like I'm not as concerned about what other people think, especially when it comes to my partners. I want to please my partners. I want them to enjoy me, and I want to be able to do things that make them feel good. But at a certain point, I'm like, what's the point of having sex if I am not enjoying it? So I don't look at sex as a way to validate me being sexy or anything like that. Like at my age, I know that I'm sexy, and I know that comes from a place from inside out. And so a lot of my shift in that perspective allows me to just concentrate more on the energy of the sex, and as I get older. But I have found this to be very, very true for men. When men get a certain age, especially like mid-30s and older, or even probably early 30s, depending on how much access to the people they desire, but we'll just talk about heterosexual men at the moment. If you've got a really attractive guy, or even just a decent attractive guy that knows how to talk to women, he's been getting pussy his whole life, the aesthetics of a woman may give him an ego boost, but it's not going to necessarily make him have a really good time in the bedroom. Oftentimes, once the testosterone levels start to lower, especially in your mid-30s, or once a guy has had a lot of different women, had access to a lot of different women, then it's the energetic connection that means more. It's the energy of the woman or the energy of their partner that means more. And so that becomes a lot more important as you get older, or as you just experienced a lot of stuff. Now, some people get addicted to, you know, adult content, and so there's a disconnect, but usually they go down a rabbit hole of like needing more just like crass material and just super hypersexual stuff in order to get off. And that stuff is not even really that satisfying. It's not really pleasurable. It's just like instantly gratifying. It's more from a place of arousal than pleasure. And I think there's a difference between something being arousing to you versus being pleasurable, because our body can just biologically respond to certain stimuli, but it doesn't mean that's necessarily pleasurable. Women who've been assaulted understand this, but I think men go through the same thing when they get addicted to certain things, and they, you know, become hypersexual, and then they don't want to relate that to their sexuality or how they identify. A lot of times it's because they're just aroused by something, their body responds to it, and so they get addicted to it. It's not necessarily something that's super pleasurable to them. And then they have to kind of deconstruct that to make it pleasurable if it's something they really want. But energetically, things that feel good in the bedroom become extremely important. You know, just seeing a nipple or just seeing a body part as you get older, you know, doesn't do what it did for you as a teenager, and it shouldn't. You shouldn't go crazy over like seeing somebody's nipple, you know, like you should be a little bit more mature as you get older. So energetic connection, the intangible things that you experience in the bedroom become way more important as you get older. Age is just a number, and this is very true. There's a lot of talk online about like once a woman hits a certain age, you know, she's not attractive anymore, and blah 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 blah, and only certain, you know, we're taught that, you know, in your 20s you're your sexiest. I think 20-year-olds are literally are like really beautiful people, just in general. When I was in my 20s, I felt like, you know, my skin was a little bit more supple and round, and my face was a little bit more full and round. And before I had kids, I didn't have the same stretch marks and stuff that I had. But I wouldn't say that I was sexier. And we're talking about sex here, like, and I also wouldn't say that I got more attention than I do now. Now, I'm an influencer now, so it's a little bit different. But what I have found over the years is that the more that you are confident, and as long as you take care of your body, there's always, you're going to attract people, and people are going to find you sexy and attractive. But it's more about how you carry yourself. It's more how you express yourself. It's more about how you're more put together. So like, even though I may have, you know, looked super cute and stuff when I was in my 20s, I feel like I have more of a look that's well put together. I'm still working on that, but I have more of a look now than I did before. I feel like I'm, you know, more toned in places, and I just exude more confidence. I move in a way, you know, in the bedroom and out of the bedroom, that I feel like that exudes confidence and sex appeal. And because of that, I attract just as much or more attention as I did when I was in my 20s. So don't think that just because you reach a certain age that you're going to be less attractive or less sexy. That's not the case. A lot of it has to do with how well you take care of yourself, though. And if you are growing and evolving, like a lot of times in my 40s, I found that I've sexually attracted like women. I mean, well, yeah, women, but men, probably from the ages of like 20 to like, not 20, 30 to 60, because of the knowledge that I share, because of the openness, because you know, I'm able to articulate, you know, what I like, and I, you know, I speak from a place of like just wanting to connect and understand like people's desires and interests, and I think and then of course the yoga and the tantra and all of that's really appealing to a lot of good looking men, whereas I feel like in my 20s, and women, whereas I feel like in my 20s I really didn't know much. I wasn't super confident in my body, my posture wasn't that great. Like I might attract people just because, you know, I had a pretty face or something, and then I still exuded sex appeal, but it's just different. It's just different now. So I'm saying all that to say, yes, you're probably super sexy if you're in your 20s, but it doesn't have to stop if you're taking good care of yourself. Now, if you believe in the stereotype that once you get a certain age, you're not cute, you're not sexy or anything anymore, and you don't take care of your body, you don't eat well, then you probably won't. But at the end of the day, age really is just a number, and my 44 and somebody else's 44 is not going to look the same. Your 20 or your 30 or 35, whatever age you are, is not going to necessarily look like somebody else's 35, 20-year-old self. You know, look your best, feel your best, be confident. Like, age really is just a number. Okay. The best lovers don't fit typical stereotypes. I think this is a huge one, and what I'm continuing to learn as I explore like my own pleasure and meet people. I have had not a huge number of partners, but I've probably, I don't want to put body count out there, but I've had less than like 15 partners, men and women, we'll just say that. But I've had a good variety of partners, enough at this age to say that you would be surprised that what people aesthetically find like are the upper echelon of like people, like what they're into and who is really good at sex and who's not. I have found that somebody in the way they look does not necessarily determine like how good they are in the bedroom. It's more about how knowledgeable and how open they are. But if they are a good lover, they usually don't follow stereotypes. So if you have a guy that is like 6'5", really good looking, typical, very masculine guy, he may not be the best lover because he has had a lot of, of getting everything that he wants, and he's never had to work that hard for it. And he's in line with societal norms. So there's a lot of societal norms and things that we put up on a pedestal in our society that people wouldn't even care if that wasn't the case. Like it's just propaganda that's sold to us through capitalism and colonization. It's not anything that really necessarily feels good to us, but it's what we measure ourselves up against all the time. And when it comes to the bedroom, a lot of times it doesn't translate into like the best experience that you can have. I would say, like definitely I've had different size looks of lovers that were attractive, but I would say in order for them to be my best lovers, they usually had something different about their personality, something outside the box that they were into that people would be like, whoa. But it's because if you are following like very rigid rules and societal norms in the bedroom, you're going to be boring. I'm sorry. Like if you're very typical, or you've never did anything that was spontaneous or different than what most people would do, then you're probably boring in the bedroom. I'm sorry, you just probably are. So I just say that to say that if you want to have a good experience in the bedroom, you don't need to just go off of looks or what like society says is like the upper echelon of people. Like if you want to find a good lover, you need to talk to them and not be afraid to like explore something with people who think outside the box, people who are a little bit different, people who maybe are do things that you'd be like, oh my gosh, really? Like those are going to be your good lovers. Now if you can't hang, then you may not want to be with those people. But a lot of times your most thoughtful people are in the kink and BDSM community. A lot of times people who think outside the box, they usually are more attentive. A lot of times your shorter guys are gonna work harder. Like it's just something to think about. And I think in general, when it comes to love and relationships, we should think more about connection and how somebody makes us feel, and less about, boxes checked. I mean, we need our needs met in certain different ways, but you don't want to you don't want to get too caught up in stereotypes and societal norms, because it's no fun. The next one is sex drive varies depending on lifestyle. So I think when it comes to like your sex drive and being able to enjoy sex, like if you want to be able to enjoy sex, and I think it's really important. I feel like if you're not enjoying sex on a regular basis, it's a sign that you're getting old really fast, because sexual energy is like what keeps us young. It's what keeps us vital. If you're not, just think about it. Anybody that you know that has aged well in Hollywood or that's in media, usually there's something sexy about them, because sexiness is youthful, and that means that you're healthy. So I would say that in order to keep up your sex life and to keep it healthy, a lot of times depends on your lifestyle. And a lot of people who don't have the best sex life usually have a very mundane life, or they have a really strict 9 to 5, or they are so overly concerned with like keeping up appearances because of what they do or whatnot, and don't have a lot of balance in just like being creative and nurturing their sensuality, and their libido will go down because of that. And I think this happens a lot of times to a lot of women when they have children and they lose themselves in their families and work and just trying to check all the boxes of being, I guess, a superwoman. And when you do that, it can easily lose your sex drive. So I think this is something that's not talked about enough. I'm very active. I do yoga. Of course, I'm a tantrika. I talk about sex all the time, and I think that's contributed to my excitement about sex and my libido staying high. Even though I think you have some sex educators that still kind of struggle with staying excited because they don't get to practice the somatic part. So like I've done new yoga, I've run in the ocean naked. Like I have things in my life that kind of keep me excited and keep my sexual energy riled up and I'm constantly releasing inhibitions. Y'all saw I had the, the sensual BDSM session. That was something new. But in order to keep, like, you kind of have to feed your libido. It's not something that just kind of comes and goes. It's something that you have to nurture with your lifestyle, especially as you get older. And the last thing I want to share for now is women know very little in general about men's pleasure. And women probably feel the same about men, but I think that's talked about a lot. But I think what women don't realize is they don't really know a lot about pleasure, and it's not really our fault. Some of it's men's fault, because oftentimes when they're younger and even up into old age, they will use women to validate their, manhood in life. So depending on what a woman looks like, how many women he slept with, he'll use that to prove to other men that, he's the man, or that he's a man, or whatever. The problem with that is, as women, we think that because of the way we look, or if we act prim and proper, if we're super submissive all the time or whatever, that's what turns men on, and that's not necessarily the case, especially as they get older. That's more just like for show. That's more just for like, proving that their manhood. So because of that, and because a lot of times they're expected to present a certain role as a man, and that's more important to them than you actually knowing what's pleasing them, you don't really know. A lot of times as women, we don't know what brings men pleasure. We know a lot of times how to get them aroused, again, arousal and pleasure are two different things, but we don't really know a lot about men's pleasure. Men's best orgasms really do come from, their prostate. So, and how many people or how many women do you hear saying, oh yeah, I pegged my man last night, or I gave him a prostate massage, or we used like an anal vibrator? Not many, and a lot of men are not ready for that. But again, it's attached to like hyper masculinity. But I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because as I'm deconstructing like pleasure more and more, and like talking to people and understanding like my own traumas with relationships and stuff, I realize, like a lot of times we're moving from a place of ego and being validated and just wanting to be, and being people pleasers and wanting to be accepted in society and prove that we're enough, that we miss the whole point of coming together and enjoying each other. And so I'm like, yeah, so like men are faking it a lot too. I mean, their body parts respond to visual things, but they also oftentimes get trained to like certain things. So, all right, that's all I want to share for now. And I think we are going to head over to Dumbo. I'm going to take you guys with me, and so I can get my breakfast sandwich, and and just enjoy that. So I had my little biscuit sandwich, very satisfied, and I'm just taking a walk. I've been on my phone, just enjoying the weather. Summer always goes by so fast, and you know. But I love Brooklyn Bridge Park. It always reminds me of how lucky I am to actually live in New York, in Brooklyn in particular. I would not choose to live in Manhattan unless I just got a really good deal on an apartment. I love Brooklyn. So I think I'm going to head back home. I'm trying to decide if I want to do some more work on my Sacred Foreplay series or just kind of relax and chill for the rest of the day. It's still kind of early, we'll see. Alright guys, it is 9:30. I had a good day. I had a very good day. After I left Dumbo, I stopped by the store, picked up a couple things, and walked back home, walked through the park, and caught the Spike Lee event for a little while, and fixed dinner, and then had my cookie. It was delicious. And I thought of 11 more things that I've learned about sex that I wanted to share tonight. So let's continue. A good pull-out game doesn't exist. I have 4 children from, well, I'll say 3, because even though none of my children were planned, my son, who was my 3rd child, I was okay with getting pregnant. Like, we just were like whatever by then, in my first marriage. But my other 3 children, my 3 girls, like, I wasn't supposed to be, the plan was not to have a baby. In fact, they couldn't have come at a worse time, and it was all from a guy thinking that he could pull out. And this is, you know, men that I was in a relationship with. I will never do that again. I will never trust a guy to pull out, no matter, you know, how no matter how confident he is. The pussy always wins in the end. So ladies, protect yourself. You don't want to have children, just use a condom. And that's the second thing I've learned about sex. Like, always use protection, especially if you are not like in a committed relationship or even married. Like, I know guys will be like, oh, it feels better without the condom or whatever, but I feel like there's so many STIs going around, and you just, what I've learned over the years is guys will convince you sometimes to not use protection, but you're just better off using protection. I'm very thankful that I've never had any serious STIs. I've only had like HPV, I think, That's nothing. That's the only thing I've ever had, and that actually was like a couple of years ago, and you know, that was it. And then just the pregnancies that were unexpected, but what it taught me is just like, just use protection. Like, if you don't want to have kids, if you're not in a committed relationship, just use protection. You'll save yourself just a lot of issues. Protect your pussy at all costs. The next thing I learned about sex is that casual sex is not bad for women. There's this constant conversation about like women not being able to handle their emotions and like being a portal for other people's energy. And this is true. Women are more like a receptacle and they hold energy, but men are just as connected to their emotions. They just are able to compartmentalize them a little bit better than women, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect them just as much. In fact, I think men compartmentalize sex from their emotions more because they can't handle getting too attached. Whereas women, we might cry about things and then we release it. But casual sex, I will say as a woman, as long as you're using discernment, and I'm saying casual sex as like sex without commitment. I have only had a couple like unpleasant experiences having casual sex. But when I was in committed relationships, I had sex that literally changed my life, meaning that I made major decisions from being in love and having sex and trusting the person that shifted the course of my life. I don't necessarily regret it, but I had some really hard lessons than casual sex ever did. Because I think when a woman comes in to a situation knowing that it's a casual thing, you protect yourself, your expectations aren't as high, you know, hopefully you have a good time, then you move on if that's what you want. You know what I'm saying? And you just have to have good discernment, take your time with picking your partner, and you should be fine. To me, in my life, it's the long-term relationships and, you know, the sex there, committed relationships that have affected me the most. So don't let anybody tell you as a woman that casual sex are harmful. I do think casual sex is harmful for you just because you're a woman. It's more important to use discernment. It's more important to be picky with your partners. And just because you're having casual sex doesn't mean you need to have a roster that's a mile long. It doesn't mean that every time you get horny you need to like find a partner. It just means that if you're going to have sex outside of being in a relationship, just take the proper precautions and do everything to protect yourself. And just, you know, like, I don't know, I feel like if you're a grown woman, you can handle it. Point blank, period. It's when people are trying to be deceptive and like, you know, aren't honest with you where I feel like it's most harmful for women. But the next thing that I've learned is that sex does not replace love. So I think sometimes if you are trying to replace love with sex, this is when casual sex becomes a problem. So that's the other thing you need to understand. Replacing love with sex does not work. If you are really longing for intimacy, a connection, a relationship, sex is not the way to go to get it. Especially when it comes to men, but women too. You know, if you want to create a relationship, you need to communicate that. So you cannot, you don't need to necessarily think that just because you have sex with someone, you're going to get closer. It doesn't necessarily cultivate intimacy, which is the next thing that I've learned about sex. And I think people should know, if you want to cultivate intimacy, emotional connection is what you need. You need to be able to speak about your emotions, process them, and then you have to have like a reciprocating energy where someone's willing to do that as well. If you're willing to do that and the other person is not, you're not going to cultivate intimacy, whether you're in a committed relationship or not, whether you're having sex or not. So that's important to understand when it comes to sex. You cannot replace love with sex. You can have sex with somebody that you love, and if you love someone or the person loves you, it can strengthen the bond in a loving relationship. But sex does not replace love, and you cannot necessarily expect for sex to make you closer if there's no emotional connection or there's no intimacy being cultivated. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, and that's something that I've learned over the years. The other thing is that sexuality is a spectrum. So a lot of people get caught up in being defined in these rigid boxes, especially people who think that they're heterosexual, which is fine. Heterosexuality is great. That's kind of how I started, you know, as a young woman. But when it comes to what brings you pleasure, you know, sexual orientation, how you identify and what brings you pleasure those are all different things. And really, I think over time as a woman that's 44 years old, you learn that none of that really matters. Like, why do people care what people do in their bedroom that, gives them pleasure? Like, it doesn't matter. But, people like to identify and be proud of who they are. I'm a proud bisexual woman. But at the end of the day, I'm like, it really doesn't matter. We get caught up in labels and stuff. But in reality, sexuality is a spectrum. And so you might be surprised that something you might think is gay or something you might think is hetero. It might be something that you enjoy and that brings you pleasure. And it really has nothing to do with how you identify or not. And so it's important to remember that so that you release shame, deconstruct, ideologies that have taught you otherwise so that you can actually enjoy yourself. That's really important when it comes to sex. Like, keep all of that political stuff out the bedroom. Just enjoy yourself, because sex is on a spectrum, and don't be surprised if you like some things that I seem to identify with, like what most people would think are outside the box of what you identify as. The other thing that I've learned is that sexuality is something that should evolve over time. So as you get older, your sexuality should evolve just like your mind evolves. If you still get extremely turned on by the same things that you always did, that's cool, but it's not really that normal. And I'm not talking about like in general stuff, like you might be turned on by kissing, or you might be turned on by being touched a certain way. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that as you get older, usually, when you're a teenager, like maybe seeing a body part might like get you really excited. And now that you're like in your 40s, you might still get excited, but it's not the same. And so your sexuality and the things that you like should evolve a little bit. And that's actually a really good thing. You don't want your sex life to be super mundane. Fun is in variety, living and adventure and excitement is in the spice of life. And that's the way things in the bedroom should be too. I know a lot of times when people explore their sexuality, they think they're opening Pandora's box, and you kind of are. But as long as you are spiritually grounded, and as you get older, you should be able to explore more, because you should be wiser, you should be more responsible, you should be more self-aware. So that should allow for you to expand and explore and evolve in your sexuality and take a little bit more risk. Not the opposite. Like, just because you're getting older doesn't mean like you do less and less. And I feel like when you do that, it makes you get old faster. Like, you should evolve. That's a good thing. A lot of times I think we're taught that as you get older you should do less and you should be more demure and almost like not stoic but prude. But no, as you get older you should be more wild and sexy because you are more responsible. It's when you're young and dumb when you don't want to be doing a bunch of wild shit. The other thing that I've learned about sex is that it can be healing. And I know for some people they might think it's cliche, sexual healing, but it's true. Sexual energy is creative energy, meaning it's the energy that creates babies, it's the energy that creates everything that exists. So you can actually use sexual energy to like heal your body. But I think probably if you're not into sexual alchemy and things like that, just on the most mundane, simple level, it can help relieve stress. It can help bring up emotions. A lot of people think that, that's a bad thing, but it actually is a good thing, because a lot of times we are suppressing anger, anxiety, because we don't have a good full release, right? But when you have a good full release and those hormones are coming up and parts of you are triggered, that's a good time to flush a lot of that stuff out, bring it up to the surface and address it, and that's healthy. When you're constantly stressed out, anxious, or have bottled up emotions and you don't have a good release, a good scream, a good, sweat out, you hold that stuff in your internal organs, your vital organs, and then it ages you, it taxes you, and it turns into, illnesses. So even on the most mundane levels, sex is healing, and it's important. On the next thing that I learned from experience is that sex can fuel your creativity. And this does not necessarily have to be with having sex with someone else. Like, it could be like just self-pleasuring, or just moving in a sensual way, or just getting like allowing the sexual energy to flow through your body. I have had so many moments when after I've either had really great sex with someone, or if I've had a good self-pleasuring session, or if I was moving in a very sensual, sexy way, where I'd have like creative ideas, or I'd have epiphanies, or I would just have like, you know, these inspiring moments. And again, I think it's because when you have this excitement of energy flowing through your body and you're releasing hormones, you're like unblocking emotional things within the body. If you're not ashamed of your energy, and if you feel comfortable with your body, you like loosen up. You become more fluid in your body, and then you become more fluid in your mind, and it makes room for you to have a bigger imagination, or to be open to more deposits from the universe. Sex is a very spiritual thing, or it can be, if you allow it to flow all the way up through your heart and through your mind. If you just keep it down in your loins and in your genitals, then it can't do a lot for you. But if you have more purity of heart about how you see your sexuality, it's just something that's natural. It has the ability to heal everything throughout your body, and then also fuel your consciousness and expansion. And so, of course, that helps with your creativity and your imagination. The other thing that I've learned about sex is that toys can enhance your sex life. I feel like people are more accepting of using toys, but sometimes you hear that, you know, toys can make you numb, or there's an overuse of toys. I think the thing about toys is that you don't want to become overly dependent on them. So I use toys pretty often. I have my vibrator that I really like, but I've never been really desensitized by it. And if I have felt a little desensitization, I just stop using my toys for a while, and then I get the sensations back. But you always want to be energetically connected to your partner, and also to yourself. Sometimes you want to just like touch yourself, or dance, or move, or read some erotic poetry, or learn different ways to see your sexuality and express your sexual energy other than just like using a toy. I think that's where people make the mistake of getting desensitized, when they don't explore their sexual energy outside of using toys, or if they're trying to avoid making an emotional connection, or they're running away from some type of deep-seated trauma, and to avoid really dealing with it, they just get really, really physical with sex. I mean, that can happen even outside of using toys. You could be having sex with someone, you may have noticed this, or may have not. If you're having sex with someone and they want to be like overly like physical, or they're rushed to orgasm or whatever, it's almost like they're avoiding having a intimate connection or an energetic connection, instead of going slow sometimes and like flowing through it and really feeling and exchanging energy. They just want to get really physical, have the nut, and then move on. I think that is desensitizing. But sexual energy is an energy, and so if you're constantly nurturing it and cultivating it, no matter what type of act you're doing, if it's connected to your emotions and connected to like, you know, a full-bodied experience, you're not going to get desensitized. You're going to become more sensitive, because you're just more open, and the energy, there's not like a cap on the energy if you're constantly cultivating it and nurturing it and exploring it in that way. But when it comes to, if you're just like purely physical, then you definitely can get numbed out, need more and more intensity in order to get excited and be satisfied. And let's see, I think this is 11. I haven't been counting. But the last thing that I want to share tonight about sex that I've learned in 44 years is when you're in a long-term relationship, releasing inhibitions is really important to have a good sex life within a long-term relationship. In my first marriage, I believe one of the reasons why we had issues is because our intimacy was it was kind of non-existent. unfortunately. But then in the bed, it translated into the bedroom. We never really tried anything new. We never tried anything different. And I think a lot of it was just because my husband was just comfortable with how things were. He was satisfied with how things were. And he never wanted to get out of his comfort zone to explore more things. We were just kind of unequally yoked when it came to that. But I think just in general, even if you are equally yoked with your partner, it's important to explore. It's important to continually release inhibitions and try different things, because those new adventures, that new exploration, you learning and growing together is what helps keep the bond. It also keeps things exciting, and that's important in a romantic relationship. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share tonight, and I will see you guys tomorrow with, I guess, the other 22. Good night, guys.